Coming up next in Emoji Shooter Part 4, we're going to extend our game by adding a countdown timer. So to create a countdown timer, first we need to create a variable to store the value of the timer. We're going to call that self.timerValue. And we're going to start off at 15 seconds. Now we need to create a timer label, which is a label node that stores our timer value. I'm going to do that underneath where I've created the spaceship. We're going to call it self.timerLabel, and it's going to be a label node. I'm going to set the text to a string representation of the timer value. Remember, timer value is going to be an integer, a whole number, which stores the number of seconds remaining, and the label text needs to be a string. Now I'll set the position of the timer label. I'm going to place it at 40,738. I also need to set the font of it. I'm going to choose the MT bold and have a font size of 30. Finally, I need to add our timer label to the screen by using add child. So there you go, it's on the screen and it says 15, except it doesn't count down yet. To make it count down, I'm going to put some code in the update method. As you can see, code inside of the update method is 2 indents in. When I come down here to write some more code, I need to make sure that I'm 2 indents in. This code here is going to make the countdown timer tick. To make the countdown timer work, we're going to count the frames, and as soon as we get up to 60 frames, which is 1 second's worth, we're going to take the timer number and subtract 1 from it. So let's go up to the top of the code in the setup method and add in the frame counter. Self.frameCounter is now equal to 0. Now we need to add 1 to our frame counter every single frame. If you've got other frame counters, you might like to call this one the timer frame counter. After we've added 1 to the frame counter, we need to see if it's gone past 60 by using an if statement. If it has gone past 60, we'll subtract 1 from the timer. After we've subtracted 1 from the timer value, we now need to update the timer label by doing self.timerLabel.text. And remember, we need to set it to a string representation of the timer value. We also need to set our frame counter back to 0 so it can count up to 60 again. As you can see, our countdown timer now works. We just need it to trigger an action or an event at the end when it gets to 0. To get our game to stop, we need to stop running the code in the update method. The easiest way that I can think of doing that at this stage is to use another variable called self.gameRunning. We're going to use a Boolean variable, which is a true or a false. So I'm in the setup method and I've written self.gameRunning equals true. When the game first starts, the game is going to be running, so therefore it's set to true. In our update method, all we need to do is we need to just make sure that that value is set to true. In our if statements, you just need to remember to use the double equals for a comparison operator. Now my cursor is flashing one more indent level to the right. That's where all of my code needs to go. This is where you can run into trouble if you're not careful. But what you need to do is you need to highlight all of your code in the update method. Including the countdown timer. That's where I'm going to stop. And now all of this code needs to be shifted one indent to the right. And you can do that by pressing the indent button. It's just underneath the number 1. As you can see, the game still runs. We also need to put a similar if statement around the touch began code. That means that you can only fire a laser when the game is running. Lastly, we need to put in some code next to the countdown timer so that when it reaches 0, the game running is set to false. Notice I'm using the double equals for a comparison operator. If the self.timer value is equal to 0 and the timer has run out, then we need to set self.gameRunning to false. As you can see, the timer is now at 0 and I'm no longer able to fire any lasers and all of the update code has stopped.